Welcome to the Catalyst for Growth podcast, a place where we talk about everything under the sun regarding the journey of the professional salesperson. Welcome the hosts for the C4G Sales Professional Enrichment Podcast, Kevin Burwald and John Kailunas II. Take it away, boys.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is John Kailunas II, and I'm here proudly with my son, John Kailunas III, whose nickname is Trey. We're going to talk a continuation of the championship series. The Champion Series. Today we're going to talk about community and building bridges of inspiration and impact, and why we feel this is important for advisors and professional salespeople is simply the fact that we're not helping our younger generation sort of step up. And we feel that through athletics, and we also feel through hard mentoring and coaching and listening and being authentic and having integrity in what you do can help develop the next generation to step into our shoes as we exit society. So we think this is a very important topic. We have 4 in this entire series, and this is the first of, or excuse me, the second in the series. And we're excited to spend time with you today. Welcome, Trey.
Thank you. No, I'm excited to talk about this, especially because I personally believe that in the best case scenario with community and a champion, you have a symbiotic relationship. And through that relationship, growth, inspiration, and really learning takes place. So I think it's important to really talk about that role, and also the role that champions have to do to seek out their community to create those relationships.
Well, I'm just proud that all the education that I've spent for you know words like symbiotic. That's what I'm proud of. No. So yeah, let's talk. The journey of a champion is often seen as a solitary path, but the relationship between a champion and their community is vital and deeply intertwined. Champions are not just defined by their achievements, but also their ability to inspire, uplift, positively impact those around you. So today we want to explore how champions and community can support and enrich each other, creating a symbiotic relationship, again, using that great word you've mastered, Trey, to foster growth, inspiration, and lasting change. So let's talk about the role of a community in shaping a champion, the sport and encouragement.
Yeah, I think that definitely in youth sports, we can all, point to examples when we've seen parents, different referees, people that have ruined that game and really are putting a bad look onto their family and kid, right? And that's the negative side. But on a positive side of encouragement, of just pointing out, that drives some of the passion of a champion, right? If someone's able to say, hey, Trey, I saw you ran out, you boxed that ground ball out well, and you did a great job. Instead of saying, why didn't you get the ground ball, right? It's a very different type of conversation, one that you can move forward, you can strengthen that relationship and learn something from, or one where the champion walks away kind of feeling like, garbage.
Yeah, I mean, when I was after you in the field, I'd never. There's 2 things I'd always yell from the sideline at you. Number one, I would always say, your number is 3. If you're John Kailunas III, you were always number 3, and I'd always yell. You played defense, and I'd always yell at the other team, "Go at 3, go at 3. He's weak," knowing that you were one of the strongest players on the team, and to try to get the offense to go down to you, so you'd get a cause turnover. And then the other thing that I did when you made a bad play, I would call you Brian. Brian, there's several people in our lives, and they're incredibly uncoordinated. And so I would call him Brian, not to directly, but it would always make you smile on the field. And I'm like, nice play, Brian. You knew I was messing with you a bit, but to get focused in on what you needed to do. So let's talk about some of the opportunities and resources that a community needs in shaping champions.
Yeah, I really think that it doesn't matter what type of activities some of the youth is involved in, right? But surround yourself with people that have different perspectives, different, life paths. I think that's a very important thing that we can do and connect with the community around us, whether it's going to a youth group or going to your church, going in a rec league, right? I'm looking at adult rec leagues for different coworkers and everything. So we can hang out outside of work and learn a little bit more personally about each other instead of just having this, surface level relationship that's just transactional, right? When you start to learn who's in your community, whether it's the neighbor that's maybe just living by themselves and you walk over with a cup of coffee and share, a smile in the morning that could make their day, but they can also teach us something. They've lived a life, so they can share wisdom. And as a champion, if you're not doing some of that outreach, you're never going to learn different perspectives. And it doesn't cost much. I think that's one thing when we talk about different perspectives of a champion. I mentioned travel, but really even within the own community, you can find different perspectives, and you've got to go out and build those bridges to really understand different, things and different people.
And then, how does that get into shared values and identity, right? Your identity as a champion and shared values.
I think in shared values, one of the most important things is recognize when there are shared values, because then you're going to understand if they're just agreeing with you to agree with you, or if they actually want to have a productive conversation. And so, when you're looking at that, you know, I think it's always important to understand the values that are happening around you in your atmosphere and community, and always come back and reevaluate your values.
Yeah, I know when you went to the University of Detroit, you were one of your years you were living on a home with three other lax players, and I told you on that street in Detroit is it was a pretty rough neighborhood that you should need to go out and seek out a senior member of that community and make friends with them. And I think you young men did that. It was a master sergeant, right? And he kept you boys out of trouble because what did he say? You were a snowflake in a coal mine.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
exactly what he
so
said.
so there was some gang activity, and he steered the gangs away from you guys and told them to leave you boys alone. But you had built a relationship with him, and you really talked about who you were. But I think you took time to listen to who he was, and I think was a great source of amusement for you and a well of knowledge for you.
Yeah, I actually had a cup of coffee with him over draft weekend when I was back in Detroit. Kagan and I, my roommate, we stopped by and said hello. But learning about him, he was, concealed weapons instructor. He was ex-military and really took pride in making sure that nothing, of major happened in that neighborhood. And so actually handing over that responsibility of saying, hey, we're going on Christmas vacation. He took pride. He would call me every other day to let me know how the house was doing.
Yeah, he was a good man, and there's many good men and women in the community. We just got to take time to listen and look for them. I don't think if you would have reached out, that relationship would have ever happened because it's an odd dynamic, right?
Yep.
You got four kids playing at the local university, white kids. You're in the middle of the city of Detroit, and here's a gristly old black guy, ex-military, who's retiring in Detroit and maintaining his house and just living his own life. And if you would have reached out, he probably never would have reached out to you, but it turned to be a great relationship.
Exactly.
A champion's impact on community, right? There's always inspiration and motivation that a champion can do. And I think that's the stereotype we all have of champions. I've always said, and I've learned this from somebody, your motivation, personal motivation, and your relationship with God are the two most intimate relationships or thoughts you can have, because it's solely focused on you and God or what motivates you. Those are so things that are buried so deep inside that's very difficult to share. Some people love to yell and hoot and holler and bang their head against the locker. Other people like to, read a prayer, say a prayer, right? How do you look about champion's impact on community with inspiration and motivation? Because we always think of the guy yelling in the locker room, busting through the door, but that's not it. I mean, that's part of it. I don't want to discount that because I love that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's such a personal relationship and what inspires and motivates one.
I think especially when we look at inspiration, motivation on how a champion impacts a community, right? It's showing that it's possible. And, I always think about one of the great leaders we had at Detroit Mercy, Charlie Hayes. He's now the head coach for the Titans, which I'm really excited. His first season's coming up. An absolute.
He was a monster.
I mean, you look at his senior season, he had higher stats than the first and second team All-Americans for short stick D-midi combined.
He got robbed.
Yes. And, I mean, he wasn't always screaming and hollering. But you walk into the gym and he's throwing up 525 on the squat rack for a warm-up. I mean, he's just that guy that goes out, does it. And he showed, that there was a different path because I was more of a vocal person all throughout my career. And so
he led by example.
Exactly. And it shows another leadership philosophy. And I think it showed me that there's so many other ways, even as I'm learning the technical leadership types through my master's, through my undergraduate, and now moving into my doctorate. But it was a real life example. So I think it had even more of an impact than just a course or a class that talked about it, right?
Yeah, and let me step back too, because maybe some of the people listening didn't hear the first portion of the championship series on our podcast here. A champion isn't just the person that's holding a trophy at the end of the game. A champion is that mother who's taking care of their children. A champion is the father who's, you know, working, 12 hours a day, blue collar, busting his knuckles on an alternator, right? There's so many different forms of champion. It's not just athletic, because we feel that these tendencies of championship can be weaved in any factor of life, but more importantly, it should be weaved into the fabric of youth, because we're missing this type of conversations, and we're missing this type of leadership from our generation going down to the younger generations.
Exactly. And I think there's champions we have every day in our lives that we come across, and we might not even know that they're champions, right? They
Oh
might be
no, no, that's really wise. Yeah.
they might be coming from night school, night classes, and then they're working, as a barista at Buddy Brew, right? You never know someone's story. And so
Why are you giving Buddy Brew a? They're not paying for any of this. Why are they getting a plug?
Just because we grabbed coffee there this morning.
Yeah, we should have told them. We should have tried to get some free coffee.
Exactly.
Give them a plug.
But I think it's important to point that out consistently, because champions really are all throughout our community.
And let's talk about champions can be, another extension of that thought you just had is champions can be role models, right? And mentors, right? And why is that important?
I don't think you would want to look up to someone who never got over the hump. I think that when you look at a champion too,
it's interesting. You said you never look up to someone that didn't go over the hump, but you didn't say you would look down on them.
No. And I think that a true champion,
because I think most people would like, well, he didn't do it. He's sort of a bum.
Exactly.
But that's not the way I raised you, and that's not how you've developed, because I think there's, we said it in the original Championship Series podcast that I truly believe that there's wisdom and grace in everyone. You just need to look a little harder sometimes.
Exactly. I think one thing that we all need to realize is actually all champions have more losses usually on their records than they have wins. When you look at the really good champions, because they're practicing so much and they're fighting so many battles.
It's true. I mean, I every champion has losses, right? I look at the development of Regal. We've had great success, but we've also had some, just body blow shots that we had to take and to see if we could stand up and to move on as a firm. And personally too, right? You get these big shots and see what you can stand and what you're made of. So,
and just to go back to that point on roles and mentors, I think when we talk about them being a champion, it's someone that's learning from those failures, someone that's learning from that adversity. I don't want to be a mentee of someone who thinks that they have all the answers and who is not willing to learn from others and listen to others.
I think a good mentor, and this goes if you're going to be if you're a parent to a child, you should be their mentor, and they should have other mentors outside of the family. But you're on that journey, and it's a very personal journey for the mentee. And as a mentor, you should be there to not guide them in a direction, but to help them follow their own path and to give your experience, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, give that experience to the mentee so they don't make the same mistake or they follow in the same footsteps, right?
Yeah, I smile on that because I was actually one of the young men I mentor from Rockford. I even told him when I was
This is Rockford, Michigan,
correct?
Right?
Yep.
And we're in Tampa today cutting this podcast.
Yes. And so when we were talking about his outreach to college coaches, I was telling him all the mistakes I made with templates and everything. I remember emailing the wrong college coach saying it was a different university. So I think
Let me guess, you didn't get offers from that school.
Nope.
Dear coach at Georgetown, I really want to play for St. John's. Nice, Trey. Very, very nice. Let's talk a little bit about advocacy and leadership and why champions how they can use their platforms to influence and advocate.
Yeah, I think number one, advocating actually shows that you know what you're talking about with someone, right? I advocate for my players all the time with different, other college coaches.
I've seen you also advocate as a coach and as a player for your team with referees.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've got to have that passion behind it, right?
C4G can help you and your sales team grow. Contact C4G at catalystforgrowth.org or call us at 813-454-0557. The journey of success starts with a single step.
Building a strong relationship, right? Let's talk about that as a champion and how your engagement as a champion and your participation, how in the community, how it's needed and why that's so vital.
Yeah, I think I actually want to go back to East Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I grew up. I think some of those strong relationships, I think back of all of the different times when high schoolers would come to the elementary school and middle school. Pete Sturzma, who was the head football coach there, he's now coached
Great guy.
Hope football up in Michigan as well. But he would always have, I remember every home game, the varsity football team would come down to the middle school, stand there and just welcome kids into the school day for that day. And that is such something, it extended far beyond that, because then when I was a middle schooler seeing that varsity lacrosse player out on the streets, I felt comfortable asking a question about lacrosse. How do I do this dodge?
Well, we were in the country club, I don't know, 10 years ago, and this long-haired kid comes up, and he's probably, 25 at the time, and he's like, how you doing, Mr. Kailunas? How's Trey doing? And I'm like, I had no clue this was, and he was one of those seniors, and just a nice young man.
Andrew Reed.
He's like, how's he doing? Where's he playing? What's he doing? And I'm like, he's on the 18th tee. You can watch his bad golf as he comes into the club. Those are nice things. And then probably the other thing that was really pretty cool about that and where you grew up, and how they had the other athletes, integrate with the younger players is, who's the most famous reading buddy you ever had? And tell that story.
Luke Glendenning and I were reading buddies when I was at Lakeside.
Well, he was reading and you were listening.
Well, we didn't read much. I think we just talked about hockey and lacrosse, to be honest.
So he plays for Tampa Bay, right?
Yes, most recently, but he's played for the Wings, the Stars, and the Lightning. Comes from a great family. His brother.
Yeah, it is a great family and very giving family in the city of Grand Rapids. But yeah, he used to come down. He was a high schooler, and he'd come down to the grade school and help you kids, read and
try to read.
Yeah, try to read. But yeah, he was your reading buddy. So,
and I think it's one of those cool things when you talk about engagement, right? Because then as a kid going through middle school after him and his brother left East, I'm still following, rooting for them and seeing what they're accomplishing. Not many people mention it, but his brother Joe won the Heisman equivalent at Division II for Hillsdale College in Michigan.
I didn't know that.
And so, you root for that and you see that they're accomplishing, things that are obviously aren't in my realm of lacrosse, but, you hold on to that and you still have that relationship.
I think it also shows somebody that if Luke can do it, right? Because he's not a very physical, imposing individual. And he did it. I mean, he was a walk-on at Michigan, I believe. He was a grinder, man.
Yeah.
And ended up having, when he left the Wings, he was, I think, the highest percentage face-off person in the NFL, face-off specialist. So this kid's just a grinder, and he worked and just a really humble and good people. But that showed you as a young man that, hey, listen, this guy's reading with me. I can do this in my sport, or I can be that person. Derrick Rose always, I'm a huge Derrick Rose, and he's that whole Adidas commercial. Well, why not me? When they cut that up, it's like, why can't I be
MVP?
Why not me?
And I
think we don't have enough of that. And I think
Yeah.
champions through being mentors can help people be that way. And that's why we're doing C4G.
Yeah.
We have a wealth of knowledge with the firm we've built and all of the people like you we're bringing on because of our network to help other people get better. You need to be better than you were yesterday. And hopefully by listening to this as you're going to your office or you're working out, that you're going to pick up a nugget here or there to get better, to improve your family, to improve your business, to improve who you are as a person as you engage in the community. Let's talk about giving back and champions and how they give back, or how they should give back, and why should they give back?
Yeah, I think number one, don't expect anybody to be there and support you if you're not also supporting others.
I've never heard you say that, but you've heard me say 1,000 times, you get more if you give more.
Exactly.
And I always tell people when they're working referrals that if you want a referral from somebody, which is basically a fancy introduction, you better give 2 to get 1,
Exactly.
and always give more than you get. Always give more. It's just a rule of karma, right? I don't care what religion you are. Um, it's all part of the golden rule, right? To
Exactly.
give more. So,
It's and actually on that topic, it's funny because currently I'm working with Apollo Beach Lacrosse in the Tampa area. That is run by Jason Basso, the defensive coordinator over at IMG, who I played under, and he's toned it down now that he's married. But it's funny that even in the moment where now I'm helping out his camp, I'm still starry eyed because another coach that's helping out on the Sharks coaching staff is Scotty Rogers. And for those that don't know, he was the golden boy of Notre Dame for me when I was growing up in Michigan.
he was one hell of a goalie. He played on
Yeah.
Team USA. He won an MLL championship, right? Or
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So he's. I remember Trey like going down to the Notre Dame camps and just like be starry eyed at looking at Scotty Rogers, and now he's coaching with him. And the funny thing is, you did Sharks and Minnows, and explain what Sharks and Minnows. So Scotty's a big dude. He's from. He's from Long Island, is he?
Yeah, six. He's over 6'3", 275. I would say.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
Yeah.
In Basso, Coach Basso, had you guys put in shark fins?
Yeah, we had shark fins on our back.
Explain what sharks and minnows are, because it's just a great way for you to explain how little kids can work with,
Yeah. One thing that we do is when we have the kids out for those practices, we like to explain where the game came from the Native Americans. So I always like to mention that when talking about lacrosse. Really thankful that
the
community,
medicine game.
Yeah,
and that's an important thing about you. And I think that's a whole other thing. We can maybe get Liam or Tohoga or somebody in that could talk about that, because I think that spirituality of how that game is so important to their culture. If we had something like that in our culture that we could adhere to and stick to, we'd be better as a people.
I agree. And so after, we run these kids out, first time putting a lacrosse stick in their hand, and we use, non-regulation lacrosse balls, so they're softer. But they run back and forth between, the white lines as we try to knock the ball out of their sticks and pretty much ruin their day in a bad way. But I bring that experience up that's currently happening because I told Scotty when we were walking away one time, I said, you don't remember it, but it was when Arlotta Stadium was being constructed on campus. I said I was down there.
At Notre Dame.
Yeah, I was down there in South Bend, Indiana for the full week. And there was some kid, from out east that wanted to come to the Midwest just to screw up players. And I was talking to Scotty about how I wanted to play college lacrosse. And this kid was chirping me. And he pulled me aside and he said, "Don't listen to that idiot." He had some more expletives in there. But it was that little moment that helped inspire me, a little bit along the way, because I would think back to that moment and that encounter. And I told him, and his face lit up. He was thankful that he had an impact on my journey as a lacrosse player when I was youth.
Yeah, you never know when you're going to have impact. And it could be a moment like that. It was just done in passing that Scotty was there as a kid or a college kid and sharing something with you as a middle schooler or a grade schooler at the time, and how that impacted you. I mean, those words, people can carry them a long way, positively and negatively. And I think also, too, what we need to talk about the championship series is how you need to surround yourself with quality people. If you hear you're a bum every day, you're going to start thinking you're a bum. If you hear that you're a champion and you want to be, you'll be a champion. And the 5 people that are directly closest to you will have the greatest influence in your life. And as you're a parent listening to this, look at your kids' peer group. It's okay to have your kids not play with little Jimmy because little Jimmy is a troublemaker. It's okay to make sure that you have direction on who your peers are with your kids. It's very important. A lot of times we just go with the flow and the social norms, and little Jimmy across the street's easy.
Yeah.
For your kid to play with, but he may not be the right kid. And that doesn't mean Jimmy's bad. It's just he's on a different journey.
Yeah, and I actually would like to actually expand on that topic because I think there's the community aspect like you just talked about. You've got to, as a parent and as a young adult, understand who's around you and who's interacting with you and having an influence. And growing up, you always talked about the degree of separation. It's not that people are bad one way or another. It's just there's different paths in life that we all take, and everybody's got a unique path. You got to ensure that you're surrounding the people
And they're
that are
not
going to
bad paths. It's just,
Yeah.
I always say the degree of separation, you're all starting here and people are going to develop quicker, maybe physically or mentally. They're going to have different socioeconomic opportunities. They're going to have, and people slowly start splitting apart. The kindergarten class that are all the same little kids end up by third grade being a little different, and fifth grade and eighth grade and 10th, and it changes. And when
they
you get
all
adults,
branch out.
people mature at different levels, right? And so there's always a degree of separation. You don't need to be conscious of that. Not force it because it's by natural selection, but you need to be aware of that, and you need to make sure that when you're having that degree of separation, that it's in the right path for what you want to do.
And I think it's also valuable to constantly question some of the relationships you have within the community to see if it's a one-sided relationship and if both parties are, getting something out of the relationship, right? If you've got a friend that is just constantly taking from you, you've got to have that difficult conversation, which people don't like to have. We talked about earlier.
I have those all the time with advisors. We'll invest in an advisor. I mean, they'll get all of our coaching, all of the C4G stuff, all of the stuff if they're with Regal for free. But if I keep bringing water to the horse and he doesn't drink, and I do it 10 times, I'm not going to do it the 11th time because I value my time and I value the team, and I have the team respected. So, you've got to cut. You don't have to let the broker go, but you just can't spend the time because they don't value it.
Exactly. And, I think about it, it's kind of like where we grew up, right? In West Michigan, there were plenty of times when people can go out and do different crazy things, but you've got to make sure that you center yourself.
Every player has a great coach. Contact C4G at info@catalystforgrowth.org, 813-454-0557, and talk about your goals and the plan we will hold you accountable to.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what advice would you give to communities looking to create an ethos or a culture to foster future champions?
I think number one, if you're a community trying to just start out, you've got to start with kind of a local, champion itself. At Catholic Central, one of the great things that they have with their football program, now they're just absolutely dominant in Michigan. But everybody before 2016 was coached by Coach T. And he was always the ones to bring these kids from all these different Catholic schools together, install the Catholic Central values and what Catholic Central is all about, being, the oldest co-ed Catholic institution in America. But he would bring them in and really form them to be a Catholic Central Cougar. And so I think it's important that you have, as a community, a leader that is willing to bring these people together and really develop. Now, if they're just in it to say, hey, take my course just so you can be a leader, I think they're probably just there for the money. So you got to go through the weeds and see who actually cares and put those people in a room. You see the social media that I saw there was a school in Texas. They created a dad's breakfast club, for kids that didn't have a father. And now they're volunteering. They're in there. They're making the impact, right? That's
so powerful. When you read stuff like that, it's inspiring to me.
But the development of those champions doesn't happen without those dads that stepped in. So you definitely have to have people in the community that want to develop, that really want to push, and also, be there for.
What are the most important qualities that champion should have to do that in a community?
I think, to be honest, the three main ones that I teach about my leadership, principles and pillars, effort, attitude, and adaptability. So it's the three things that you're able to control in life, because outside of that, you can say,
Say that again and go a little slower with it.
Yeah, effort, attitude, and adaptability.
Okay.
So they're the three things I truly believe in life that we can control, right? Each day you can wake up and choose to be happy or sad, and your different emotions around that. Your effort. I can go into work and say, you know what? I'm kind of tired today. Maybe I only make 5 calls instead of 50. I control the level of effort. And adaptability, I think, is one of those things that I include now even more because the world is constantly changing. Your job's going to change, roles and responsibilities switch on a daily basis for a lot of companies. You can control if you want to move with the process or not.
That's real interesting. I mean, I always used to harp on effort. Effort is something that requires nothing except effort. And you could
It
you could be
costs
the
nothing.
worst. You could be the worst person on the lacrosse field, but if you're running through your lines, you're doing all you're doing it the best of your ability. You're winning. You're a champion if you're putting out effort.
When I coach, I tell all the kids that I want them to make mistakes going 100%.
And the adaptability that third portion of it is very true, especially how fast the world's moving.
And I think, from a professional context, that's, talking about the different boardrooms you're going to go into, right? It might be a huge company, it might be a small company, but you've got to understand the different talking points and the people in the room. On a sports field, you're going to go into different environments. You're going to play away games. You're going to play neutral games. You're going to play home games. You've got to understand how to control that environment, within yourself.
Yeah, you're going to go from Air Force Academy Field to Wisner Field in Pontiac.
Exactly. I know what that's like. But you still have to have your process, right? In
Yeah.
each of those games, I still followed my pregame rituals and did exactly what I would always do before games.
I knew exactly what you were doing. You were going down. You're saying your prayers. You learned all that at IMG. And I think there's something in there for professional sales and being prepared and having a process. We have a whole other podcast about that, and I think that most advisors go in as they're ad hoc. They sort of make it up as they go along. You can't do that if you're going to be a professional. You need to have a system and a process, and your warm-up was that way. You had the team warm-ups, but you had your own personal things that you did, what you ate, how you slept. I mean, everything was sort of scripted out when you're on the road and you were home. It was the same deal. You did the same thing. That repetition sort of allowed you to be calm and not overthink and have nerves because you knew what was going to happen next because you controlled it.
Exactly.
Can you share an experience with the audience about your actions as a champion, as a young man, and how it influenced change in your community?
Yeah, I would probably say at Marymount University, there was not, before I walked in the doors and everything, there was not a college Republican group there. And so I actually sought out to go find an advisor sponsorship and created that club there. And it was actually pretty incredible because we were able to, during the 2016 election, have a lot of great crossover conversations with.
Well, you were right there in D.C.
Yeah.
So I don't care what your political values are listening to this, but it was an incredible experience.
Yeah, because we were then able to have those auditorium discussions with the college Democrats. And so I actually think that during an election year, it brought us closer together because we kind of operated as one club.
Yeah, your environment, it wasn't very tribal. Now it's tribal.
Yes.
We make a judgment if you're a Republican or Democrat. And I think all that's got to end for us to come back as a country. That's a whole other podcast. But
We're Americans.
We're Americans. And, it's just gotten really tribal. We'll talk about that at another time. Let's table that for this session today. And in your opinion, I want to get back to this because I think it's real important in concluding this episode. In your opinion, how can we strengthen the relationship between champions and communities and create long-lasting change? And that's why I wanted to sort of table that political thing because that's a whole rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I guess you could use that as an example, but how do you think we can strengthen the relationships between champions and communities for lasting change?
I think that if a champion is going out to create a long-lasting relationship with their community or is asking the same back, don't look for what you're getting out of it. Figure out what you can give and then install processes. So then let's say it's 2 years or 5 years down the road when you have to make that step back because lives develop and change, someone else with your same passion can step in and carry on. So I think understanding that you're not just doing this to get something out of it for yourself, but also installing that process to really look and even train the next person up, right? That goes into the mentee.
Well, they always say in corporate America, the first thing you need to do is find your replacement. Otherwise, you'll never move up.
Exactly.
So, all right. So I'd like your last words here, what you want to leave the listening audience with, besides that the host is a phenomenal human being. Um, I don't want you to brag too much about me in this time. So what do you want to leave the audience with regarding communities and champions? I mean, I know you're really passionate about this. I mean, you've got your master's degree in this. You're now a doctorate candidate. It's a very unusual path for a 27-year-old person to go down. You don't even really know how you're going to monetize it yet, right? But it is passion of yours, so you're pursuing it. What do you want to leave the audience with today?
Well, we've got another Champions Challenge, and I would like anybody that's listening, it could be someone you haven't talked to in 5 years, but it could also be your next door neighbor. Reach out and try to just have a cup of coffee. I would prefer, if they've got more wisdom, a little bit older end, because I think that we can do a great job, better supporting our elderly community here in America. But reach out to someone you haven't talked to or you don't know and have a conversation. Ask about their life goals and ask about their life challenges and what they've learned.
I think that's excellent. And I want to just tag one thing on there. Every day, I learned this from Kevin Burwell. Every day I try to start my day with 3 positive feelings of gratitude. And whether it's writing a note, an email, or texting somebody, I just start early in the morning. I did it this morning and just thank people or thank them for an attribute or something. And I think if we all did that to each other, it would uplift the overall community of champions. And if you're not doing that, if you're not a parent, you're not doing that to your kids, shame on you. I used to have my kids, they used to get so mad at me. And I bet you Trey remembers these. What was the mantras I used to make you say before you went to bed every night?
Well, you would ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? I can be anything I want to be. And then winners never quit, quitters never win.
Yeah. And the difference between a champ and chump?
Is you.
Yeah. So there was always a mantra we had, and, they'd say their prayers and stuff, but I'd always have them say that. And I think it's real important to keep people focused on things like that, keep people focused on the positive, and that they have control over their lives and their life doesn't control them. So you're going to see more of this in the Catalyst series. We've got several other, the Catalyst for Growth podcast. You're going to see more of this championship series, and we're proud to bring this to you, and we hope that it's changing you to become a little bit better than you were yesterday. And that's all our goal is as a community of professional advisors looking to help each other and lift each other so we can all help our retail clients for them to attain their goals. And we're going to have some exciting announcements coming up by some new marketing venues to help you, as well as new opportunities for the listening audience. So thank you for your time today. Son, I love you. Great job. Look forward to having the next 2 sessions cut and that we can share with the audience. So well done. And we'll see you next time. If you want to see this or get any of this information, you can go on catalystforgrowth.org. The 4 is the numeral 4. So Catalyst number 4 growth.org. And there's a whole bunch of items that you can grab off of there that are free, worksheets and ideas and things. There's also a pay prescription we have a coaching and mentoring program. It's very inexpensive. Kevin Burwell and I run that. It's like $99 a month. And I think it's $1,000 for the year, $999 for the year. But we go through everything from cradle to grave, how to have client acquisition, how to build a referral strategy, how to build your process, to how to maximizing the sale of your practice eventually. So it's all there in one kit and caboodle. We go through it. It's 1 call a month. So if you're interested in developing yourself along with pulling nuggets from these podcasts, please jump on catalystforgrowth.org. Again, thank you for your time, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, thank you for your time today. We will have another content-packed session posted next week. Please check our website, catalystforgrowth.org, for our legal disclosures on the bottom of our homepage, if you're into that sort of thing.